I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, Season 30, Episode 23. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Riley.
I'm Jason.
I was making fun of Jason, so I was not ready to give my cue. Because he cleared his throat, and I said patient zero again.
Yeah. All right. On today's episode, Ken in Canada, which is super fun to say, by the way, asks if it's okay to just RP straight white guy characters. James from the Panhandle asks about pacing a one-shot with no test runs. And Rob in Australia asks about what systems work well for managing inconsistent schedules where players end up missing some sessions. So, and like, kind of like our Hexbreakers game where people are there and then
Just
they're not
cancel
here.
the
There.
game.
Yeah. If you'd like to contribute a question or topic to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. For announcements this week, Verk is giving away a copy of Decuma, which is a little-known game that we have no familiarity with here on this show. And so all you have to do is join the Discord and visit the giveaway channel for more information. You just go in there and you hit like an emoji, and there's a bot that's doing the contest, so you can
Nice.
just do it. And to join that, you can go to happyjacks.org/discord, and someone else has to read the little bit right there in a very official voice.
This contest is not sponsored by local Golden Lasso Games, just Verk's impulse to buy impulse buy of too many Decuma decks.
Yes.
I couldn't get my voice around the.
I didn't do the thing that we often do when you said Decuma, and I feel like I deserve a parade.
Okay. What's the thing?
Now, what's Decuma?
Yes. That's okay. They did that in the chat room. Oh, one really exciting thing about the Discord. This week, Discord is rolling out a forum functionality.
Mm.
So there's like, we're testing it out. We haven't like totally switched to it. We're seeing how it goes. So there are some channels in there where it's not just freeform chat anymore, where you make a post and then people reply, and it's more of a function where it's like slower conversation, which is very appealing to me personally.
I saw you talking about it, but when
Yeah.
I went to look at it, it was only one thing, so I didn't understand what the functionality was.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
because one of the reasons why I have been like slow to completely migrate off of the Flipbook to Discord is that I like that on the Flipbook you can. I don't know why I'm doing it that way.
It's
I don't know
fine.
why. It's a new thing that I decided to do just now.
Yes.
But the one thing I like about that awful, horrible bane on society is that it is good for groups because you can like see a post and like you might check it out a day or two later and it's still there. And
Yeah.
like for groups, whereas like with Discord, if you have a popular Discord group like the Happy Jacks RPG Discord group, it goes by so fast.
Yeah.
You're like, I missed what was happening and now I'm way behind. But if there's like more of a forum, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah, we're not switching all the channels to that, but if it turns out working out well, there's a lot of channels that really lend themselves to more that type of conversation. We'll definitely still have like chat channels too, because that's fun.
Yeah. It's a good mix of both.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing how it meshes.
Yeah.
Because Discord frequently goes too fast for me.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a hermit of the internet. Like, I want to participate, but from my hut, and like you said, I often miss what's happening.
Right.
I
Well,
love the idea of a hybrid of both.
yeah, I think that would be amazing if it really works well. The one thing, it's not like the forum functionality, everything, a thread is archived after a week of inactivity. So it's not like a forum where it's there forever, but it's basically a slow down of a conversation, which
Is
is
there a
kind
way
of cool.
can you pin something so it doesn't go away?
I don't know.
We'll have to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can pin stuff on Discord like that.
Yeah, I
on
think
main chat.
as a mod you can pin like rules and stuff.
Okay.
So if there was a thread that we wanted to keep forever, maybe. But for the most part, like it's not like forever conversations. But
Okay.
it's just a slower version of Discord,
I
which
love
is kind of a great option, I think, and might be cool. So we're testing that out. If you want to go, there's like 3 of them right now. We might start adding in a few more. Test it out. It should be fun.
Cool.
And again, to join our Discord, you go to happyjacks.org/Discord, and that will redirect you to the actual link to join the Discord. So don't be freaked out if it redirects you, because that's its entire purpose. So that it's something we can remember and you can remember. And again, if you go and join, you can go to the giveaway channel and follow the directions there, and you can win your very own copy of Decma. All right.
I now rereading this line, I understand where I got it wrong. I feel like there's a missing apostrophe
There,
somewhere in
yeah.
the mix here, and it really threw me
Yes.
off. So
There's.
just want to let you all know that I could have done a better job with those terms and conditions.
You're perfect. We love you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see it.
All right.
Yeah.
Mailbag number 1. Who would like to read it? I can read it.
Okay.
All right. Greetings to the Jackers from sunny southern Ontario. I have a delicate subject to discuss, and I'll understand if you want to pass on this letter. We didn't, obviously. Let me preface this by stating that I am an old, straight, suburban white guy. I was raised by 2 loving, inclusive, accepting, straight, white, suburban parents, but it was the 60s, 70s with all that implies. So here's my issue. I am uncomfortable role-playing anything but straight white guys. The reason for this is not that I don't want to have anything to do with non-straight, non-white, and non-guys. It's more that I'm nervous that I'll inadvertently create an affront to the group I'm representing. Acceptance, inclusion, and support are extremely important to me as a teacher, as a parent of a bisexual son, as the bulwark of forward-thinking behavior in a pretty conservative, redneck, smallish town. But I find myself periodically being corrected on my accidentally problematic behavior and language by my daughter, which I welcome. You don't learn if you don't open yourself to lessons in life. However, she's picking up on these dated expressions, etc., in normal conversations. How can I avoid doing worse, attempting to place myself in the shoes of groups of people whose lives and experiences are unlike my own? As an elementary school teacher, I'm always aware and careful about creating an environment in my classes where all students are part of the whole community, many of whom are discovering their gender identities or dealing with racial cliques or language issues. This is highly satisfying when it goes well, and it has often. I'm aware of having a good supportive reputation among the LGBTQ student community, but it requires a deal of care and consciousness of thought about what I say and how I say it. That conscious effort on my part is perhaps not as welcome when one is just trying to relax with your friends over a couple of beers and having fun. Which leads me to the root issues of this letter. 1, should I just accept this state and not worry about stepping out of my comfort zone because it is, after all, a game to be enjoyed? And 2, if the answer to the above question is no, how should I go about creating a skill set question to venture out of my comfort zone? Currently, I'm mostly GMing, so it's less of an issue, but hopefully that will change more in the future. I am alternately GMing than playing in a Supers game, but my other alternate game GM is moving out of town, so that's dried up. But hopefully, as I said, there will be other opportunities. However, this trend of mine is something that has been going on, I've realized, for about 40 years. In 40 plus years, I've never played anything but a straight white guy. Sometimes I have felt like just jumping in, but I've had visions of my characters ending up sounding like the cast of Monty Python in drag. And yes, as a JM, I have played many NPCs who are not straight white guys, but that seems more short-lived and set pieces. They are less about acting and reacting in the environment full-time, as more as levers to move a story forward, with thought-out actions and speech patterns. I do feel like my non-straight white guy NPCs have gotten stronger and less caricature-like, and honestly, that's probably due to listening to the alternate representations on actual play podcasts, and predominantly you guys, for which I would like to say bravo and thank you. So tell me, please, I'm an old redneck or chicken. Oh, am I an old redneck or a chicken or just set in my ways? And can or should I try to break out of my mold? Help me, all you jackers. You're my only hope. P.S. I've got nothing pithy. Have a nice day. Ken.
I think this is a very thoughtful question, and I can definitely tell that Ken has thought a lot about it and is like legitimately concerned about it, and I think that's valuable. I am glad that he pointed out that he doesn't just play straight white guys as a GM as well, because I think that would have been worse for
That would have
me
been terrible.
Because it does stink when like you're in a situation every NPC is just like a stand-in for the DM and just another straight white. It's like, wow, this is a whole world straight. What was this? A movie from the 50s or from the late 90s or the 2010s or 2015? Wait, anyway.
Right, yeah.
So, but I don't know. I think I'm kind of torn on this. I think I can kind of go both ways with it. I absolutely think if it's something that you are interested in exploring and you have like an actual drive to explore it, I think that you can do it. And I think I think don't think of it in terms of like, well, am I doing the right voice, or am I like, don't try to do it as a voice, don't try to do it as like a caricature, just try to do it as the character that comes to your mind when you're thinking of that character. Like, what's the character that pops in your head, and that's how you play it. At the same time, I think for a home game especially, I don't think you should feel obligated to do this if it's not going to make you comfortable and it's not going to go towards conducive like rate of play. Having said that, I think like, I'm saying a lot, so I'm sorry, but
okay.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
How dare you?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think like when you said the thing about the conscious effort is not welcome when you're trying to relax with your friends and couple over beers, I do think that's like what session zeros and stuff are for. I think that like if you're coming into a new campaign as a player and you're like, hey, I kind of want to play this character, but it's outside of my normal comfort zone, and especially if you have players at your table who like might have an issue with it, like let's say you're playing with your son and daughter and your daughter's always calling you out for behavior, like I think it's worth having that conversation to say like, how do you feel about this? Like I did a show about a year ago, last Pride Month in 2021, where it was for Queers, the game Queers, and we were playing pre-gen characters, and I don't like playing characters that don't use she her pronouns typically, because I don't like being misgendered in characters. So
Yeah.
I typically do play she/her characters always. The only character that was she/her was a woman of color, and they wanted us to use the art for the design and stuff like that. And I was at a table with Abria and Terry, and I was like, how is this for everybody here? Like, how do we feel about this? And they were like, just don't do a voice, and you'll be fine. And that's what we ended up doing. And yeah,
That was actually going to be the number one thing that I mentioned is, like, try to get in the habit of just describing what people look like. Don't do an accent.
Yeah.
Don't do like a cultural way of speaking, like, you know, from like a regional or what you imagine you like. Don't do any of the characters from Rush Hour. You know,
Yeah.
like some of the
it's
kids.
not the sample I thought you were going to pull, but I get what you're going for.
Some of the kids in my class were quoting Wakanda when it first came out. And I was like, and these are mostly white kids, right? And I was like, guys, you can quote this movie, but you cannot do it. None of us, including myself, can do that accent.
Yeah.
Like, that is not allowed.
Yeah.
And that right there can go a lot of the way there. But also, I think, like what you were saying, as a player, I would feel no obligation to not play you know, what you are personally comfortable with.
Yeah.
As a GM, I feel like we do need to people our world with some variation.
A lot of variation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't describe them, it falls to defaultism.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and that will be whatever most of the people at the table think you look like. And that's a responsibility I think that we take on as GMs.
Yeah.
I find myself also, and you've all watched, well, not all of you, but people who've watched APs for the last number of years know I always play like she/her characters. I have moved away from there. I sometimes play femi characters that use they/them now, but that was kind of like the first step. And I have occasionally for like one shots tried to play he/him characters, and it's just something I am not comfortable with.
Yeah.
And it's just not something I like playing. I have no problem with men. I love men. But
Nerd.
yes. But that's just not who I like role playing. I mean, maybe it has something to do with my total feminism and like being an Amazon and all those things. But so it's interesting if you wanted to try and take steps like they/them is kind of a first step, or being more androgynous is kind of a first step in that direction if you wanted to try something. But again, like, you know, I tried it and I don't. And most of the time I play like 99% of the time I play she/her characters in video games too. It's just what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's a
Same.
big part of it. And as long as it sounds like you're really trying and making sure, like, as you're GMing, as we've mentioned, like, that's where, like, that inclusion is absolutely necessary. And there's no excuse if you're a GM for not having that diverse, inclusive, like, varied world. As a player, play what you have fun with.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it respectfully. And if you're a straight white guy and you're playing straight white guys, good on you. You can do it
Yeah.
however you
Yeah.
like, honestly.
With the caveat that I want to add that if you are doing a show for an audience, like a
Yes.
podcast or a stream, straight white guys playing people of color and queer characters and such like that is not a substitute for real representation, I think, on the camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so if you are doing a stream for an audience, I do think there's an obligation to have diversity on your stream. Like, I think that's
Yes.
just part of it. And like, I think this channel like really works really hard to make that a reality
What
of
a
it.
good idea.
And I think a lot of other shows, like, I think have had a lot of missteps in the past of being like, well, we're a group of white guys, so we're just going to start playing characters that are also like a Latinx character or whatever. It's like, that's not representation.
We're going to
That's
be
storytelling.
diverse with our characters. And you're
Yeah.
like, no.
I think a lot of them learn that lesson the hard way. That doesn't qualify you for it. And I
Yeah.
think that's like a good thing to move past.
Yeah.
And then I had one more thought, which is, this comes with a huge caveat of I'm not saying to do this as metaphoric for any real world race or culture or thing like that. Like, that's not what I'm going at with this. But I think that a lot of fantasy settings actively have built in the idea of different character origins that are not human or are not, a typical racial component. Like, if you're looking for a way through role play to understand, if your goal is not to try to I'm walking a very thin line here. So I don't want to accidentally say the wrong thing and be horrifically offensive. It's just very easily offensive. What I'm saying is, if your goal is to kind of broaden your own personal understanding of empathy, then I think if you're playing a character outside of like a typical realistic culture, think about that a lot when you're building your character. Think about a lot of like, what is this character's background like? What is this society that they're from like? And think about how your character then is different than like the mainstream culture in the games that you're playing, and think about that through your role play. And that might actually be more suited for you to understand and learn your empathy than trying to just do an amalgamation of a real world marginalized group.
Yeah.
That
I
actually.
hope that I got through that okay.
No, I think you did.
I'll
sorry.
take my lumps if I didn't.
Well, I was gonna say, and it might be great to start off with playing if your kids play. It sounds like they are kind of on the right track so maybe play a game with your son or your daughter, and they seem to like they're kind of tuned into those things. That could be a great learning experience for you, kind of a safe place to try something like that, with a little bit of guidance from them. That might be a cool family thing to do.
I like that.
Couple things I wanted to add to that. One, I would, and maybe you're doing this already, you didn't mention it. One of the things that was taught to me by a very patient trans friend was the habit of when I had misgendered them, they encouraged me, and they corrected me. They encouraged me to just say thank you instead of I'm so sorry,
Yes.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Because then that puts it on the marginalized person to say, it's okay, don't. But just thanking them, one, for caring enough to correct you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a mark of caring. And two, to not burden them with the next level of your, it's just thank them and do better. That's the goal. But another really good experience I had was I, for a long time, really loved playing half-orc characters. And that was before I really understood a lot of the, racist underpinnings of where a lot of that lore came from. And once I understood that a little bit better, I realized what I really like about these characters is that they're big and tough and they look a little different and they've got tusks. I just liked the aesthetic of that.
Yeah.
And in speaking with some people when I was starting to play a D&D campaign here on our show, where I played a half-orc woman paladin, the note was made it's okay to do this, but it's not about I have to steer clear of making it oppression tourism.
Mm-hmm.
In that, for me, my character, and I hadn't really done this as I'm going to do it because of this, but my character came from, was a wealthy artist, right? So I wasn't playing into the tropes of what people assume.
Yeah.
And so what Riley's saying about having, a fantasy experience to kind of dip a toe in the water can maybe feel a little bit safer. Although half-orcs are legit, there's a very racist background, and that's not.
And again, in general, picking a fantasy race, being like, oh, this kind of reminds me of this real world culture that I want to roleplay as. That's when it's red flagging.
That's not what we want. But and I was also just going to add one other thing that nobody else has to do, but like everyone has said, experimenting with different characters. I almost always play characters with she/her pronouns.
Yeah.
Almost always. And for a long time, I didn't really understand why. Eventually, it became because I wasn't totally in touch with my pansexuality, and like that was something I needed to discover about myself. Because they were also, I sort of got teased for playing a lot of lesbian characters, but most of my characters are straight women or bi or whatever. And it was
one of the three. Cool. Or pan.
They had a sexuality.
Yes.
But the point is, for me, it gave me an opportunity to think about things in a way that's not like, well, what, how can I portray a stereotypical woman? It was, how can I...
Talk about shopping?
Yeah.
Be shopping all the time?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Tampons, lots of tampons.
Yep.
Not always.
Not always. Yeah,
hey.
that's true.
Yep.
But stereotypically, yes.
But it for me, I want to make sure I make space at the table for anyone who is having that type of explorative experience.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
While also encouraging the okay, now look, we're not leaning into stereotypes or cultural stereotypes or, the oppression Olympics, that's not my story to tell.
Yeah.
But if the character looks or is a certain way without just diving into a stereotype, positive or negative, right? Positive stereotypes can be like quote unquote positive, are just as harmful. So
yeah, I totally. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. There's a big section I wrote when I was writing Starscape specifically about this, because what ends up happening a lot of times, it's like oppression tourism, where people who are not oppressed put on a character who is oppressed in ways that they are not, and there are ways where you can go about it, like Riley was saying, where you have to you're careful about it, and especially since you're at a home game, it's a little bit different than something that people are going to be viewing and watching, and hopefully seeing themselves represented in. You still definitely should be respectful. It's not like we can do anything, nobody's watching, but you do have to be careful, because a lot of these things for sci-fi specifically, which is why I wrote about, because Starscape is a sci-fi setting, it's like it is allegory for actual specific races or religions of people and things like that. So as you're picking something, if you're going to, which you don't have to, again, you don't have to do this, think about that and go at it from a lens of, I love that you use the word empathy. That was such a great way, like learning from it, exploring pieces of yourself, like Jason said, like, am I interested in doing this because this is something that's part of me? Like, adding the parts of you to that character that are there is like the easiest way, because no matter what like gender your character is, or mythological fantasy race, there's still going to be elements of it that are you. So figure out, okay, what pieces of me would work with this character and put them in there, and that's the way to make it the truest. And don't use it as a, well, I'm going to see what it's like to have people treat me, with racism. It's like, no, that's not your thing to explore.
Yeah.
or to play out as like the victim for the 3 hours you play once a week.
Right.
It's like, that's not doing it respectfully. But
it's also putting a lot on the other players at the table to have to play through that too, because it might be something that they don't want to have, and that's why we have X cards and things like that.
Yeah.
I think also
so many alsos. So many.
Something you had said, about room to explore something. I think that's that's more for me about when you're talking about gender or sexuality issues than I would say racial issues, because obviously, like, you can't and shouldn't explore being another race. But you can,
that's a good point.
But you can and should be willing to explore sexuality or gender if it's something that you are. I mean, like, this is not the original OP's question.
Yes.
But this is my experience with gaming, is that before I transitioned, I loved playing female characters and femme characters and queer characters in games because that gave me a safe space. I wrote a whole article about it for Nerdist about like how I found myself through gaming. I played
awesome.
and I played characters who went through very traumatic things, and I played characters who went through very idyllic lives as the gender or sexuality that I wanted to have. You know, I played a vampire who was like an 80s glam rocker that was like, that gave me an excuse to wear women's jeans and a blazer and with eyeliner to a LARP, you know, like that kind of stuff. So I think like that's why I definitely don't want to come down the side of like you should never outplay outside of what you are, because maybe you aren't what you think you are, and it might be great to have the bumpers to do it. And then going off of the orc thing and what you were saying about these things being based on real world like stereotypes, the really fun thing to do in a fantasy game is when you know the race is based off a real world stereotype is to then not do that and do it differently.
Yeah.
Just
And
turn it.
this is such a like a ridiculous example, but there's one of my favorite D&D podcasts these days is Dungeons and Daddies. I've listened to it since it
Oh.
began.
Love that show.
So good. And one thing
What?
Anthony did
Making
that's
a note.
so good. I should warn you, it's not a BDSM podcast.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
In their first season, they had a scene where they came upon a camp full of orcs, and Anthony, the GM, decided instead of making the orcs be all like, you know, he made them like, oh my god, what is happening? Oh my! He made them like total chads, and
Yeah.
it was like so funny because it
love
wasn't what anyone was expecting, and they were all like, they translated their text. They were just always like really just like, oh my god, like it was so
Very funny.
funny. And then I know we can move on soon, but I'm gonna write an email about all this. No, I played an orc in the Rat Queens RPG that we did, and I played an orc Braga who was trans.
Yeah.
And that was like a really fun way to play on and do a different thing with orcs. Now, granted, I was a little bit hamstrung anyway because she's a written character in comics that I was playing as.
Yeah.
I
But we
love
were
that
given
book so much.
It's so good, and our RPG was fantastic.
It was
I'm
really
gonna
good.
have to check that
Thank
out.
you. Thank you. It meant a lot to me to play Braga as I purposely like didn't give her a gruff like voice. I never heard what Braga sounded like before because it's only in comics.
Yeah.
I kind of gave her more of a Klingon, like a very like, and it became Riley after a while. But like that's looking at that instead of being like, okay, orcs are a metaphor for a certain type of like people of color, whatever. I looked at it as like, oh, this is a trans character, and like she comes from an extremely hyper masculine background, and so it's like it was just taking real world dysphoria that I had and like heightening it and being like, here's this person who was shaped by this culture she came from, and like it shaped her, but she's still who she is, and she still found a way to make herself who she is. That was a good entry point into that character, and I was able to play an orc without any like racial ties to it, which was really good.
I think these kinds of self explorations are when tabletop RPGs become so special.
Yeah.
And really set themselves apart from all the other fun things we like to do. And tabletop RPGs sometimes are just dumb fun, but for me, most of the time, that storytelling, that like thinking about who these characters are, is so rich and just fundamental of a process that, yeah.
It feels real. That's
Yeah.
why so many times we end up like dreaming in character or dreaming of our characters and things like that, because like in some level on our brain, like they're real.
Yeah.
They are, and because they have, like you were just describing, like parts of us in them.
Yeah.
No matter how different a character you end up trying to play.
Yeah.
Like there's always something in there that's you.
Yeah, like Daphne, I did not intend to be like me at all. But we had one session where
Right.
suddenly Daphne became me because it was just way
Yo,
easier. Yeah.
if you aren't watching Hexbreakers, you absolutely must get caught up. There's a little lull this week, so you have a chance. I'm not on the show. Both of these people are. I am the biggest super fan of the Wednesday show here.
That's right.
It's so good.
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to, like, we're talking about these like core truths of ourselves that we find in games. It doesn't have to be that.
No.
Like you're trying to play her character for the first time. Cool. Maybe she's a woodworker because you are.
Yeah.
Like there's been many times where, I've played like bard characters and I am kind of a bard and things like that. Like it can be something
totally.
silly, like a hobby that you have that the character has in common with you. And just those little things that you are incredibly familiar with in real life can really ring as touchstones and make it a lot easier for you to make these characters a real person rather than what you're worried about making them a caricature.
Yeah, or like playing a like rebellious teenage boy superhero character because like I was such a bad boy rebel in high school that I wanted to bring that to a
Did
character.
you mean to say that as bad boy rebel? Like you
Yeah, I did. That's where the comma goes.
Yeah, it was very cute. You tried.
bad comma boy.
You're like,
hyphen.
I'm a bad boy.
The bad boy of hype high.
Are you feeling good about yourself today? Can I help you in any way? As I'm a bad boy.
He's
I
a
was-
cool
I was
rider.
rebelling
Cool
against
rider.
machismo.
Yeah.
Better Grease, in my opinion. Sorry, I said it.
All right.
Who's that guy?
All right. That was
You heard here Grease
Oh
too?
yeah,
That
we have
Grease
other
too.
letters.
yes,
Grease
we
2
do.
with the
That was
superior
great,
Grease.
Ken. Thank you for being brave enough to write that email. I know you put a lot of thought into it. It's very evident. Thank you for being so thoughtful about how you worded it. But I think it was a good question, and I am very glad that you decided to write it in. And number 2.
I'll go for it.
Okay.
All right. I talked a lot last time, so I feel like this is my penance.
The small little one.
Ahoy, Kimmy and crew! Wanted to write about a couple of things. 1, congratulations on being able to keep this podcast going and viable to the community. After 12 years of existing, the last of which was a year of burnout, as of August 2022, the 1D4 podcast has finally released its final episode.
No.
The burnout kept my procrastination alive, but I finally decided to end it rather than just fade away. It's bittersweet, but all of us have other things to focus on. It's nice to have closure, and we'll see if I do any other projects in the future. I bet you do. The convention that spawned from the podcast, 1D4 Con, is still alive and well. I'm still getting my ducks in a row. So you're literally already in a project.
Yeah.
Let's see if I'll do
Yeah.
more projects, but I'm still doing a project now. The next sentence.
Immediate project.
I promise I did not write this email.
I'm still getting my ducks in a row, but it will return in spring of 2023, still as an online con due to many reasons. Maybe 2024 will be the year we come back into meat space. MEAT space. We will see.
Hmm.
2. I've run many of one shots, but I can never get the paving right on the first time I run a game. I don't have a lot of time. I think they meant
Pacing,
pacing.
it's
okay.
pacing.
I kind of like the idea of paving
Yeah.
though. Like you're trying to
Paving,
put this road out
trying to build
like,
this road and it's all cobblestone.
Yeah, no, I'm going to stick with paving.
I get a drought friendly RPG.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of time due to family and work constraints to always be able to run a playtest if my scenario to make a playtest. I think they mean playtest of my scenario to make sure I can fit it into one 4-hour session. I try to keep the plot simple and allow players freedom of choice within the game world, but I always find my game running over the first playthrough. What tactics do you use in a convention game or other time-constrained games to keep the pace? Take a long drink for us retired podcasters.
Cheers.
Opa! Thank you. That was for me. That was not for the email. Thank you for keeping this going. James from the Panhandle, 1D4con_James on the Discord.
Ooh.
Awesome.
So I never pre-test any of my one-shots for cons.
Neither.
Can
Because
I say something about this?
yes.
I also don't pre-test, but I have a method, and it works pretty well.
Okay.
Because I like to give the characters choice,
Yes.
but in a 4-hour slot, they can't have all the choices in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So I usually will pre-decide 2 or 3 options that the NPCs are going to give them, which mostly equate to not literally the same outcome, but like, do you want to fight dragon turtles or turtle dragons? Or sharks.
Yeah.
When, and
Definitely the sharks.
and so they could kind of pick, did the characters make are they a bunch of fighty characters? Are they more investigation? They could kind of pick the mystery that was more towards what they ended up making.
Mm-hmm.
But within that context, the best thing I've come to do is you have 3 main touch points, and that is your opening, character creation, have a chance to meet the characters, maybe a surprise encounter of something very quick so that everyone can roll some dice. or a quick investigation if that's kind of where everything is. Like, oh, the lights all went out, and now we have to find the turtle, dove, shark, turtle things.
And also have like lasers on their forehead so they light the room up.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then a second step, which is usually a fair bit more investigation, tracking, hunting, discovery, with something along those lines, and then a final confrontation of some kind, which I like to leave room open for that being a talk your way out of it as well, that doesn't end up turning 40 minutes into 5 minutes. Often there's a way where you can have some talking options while the cavern is coming down, or the lasers on the heads are recharging, and there's still tension, and you're building to something in the story, even though your bard wants a chance to talk this person down. Also, I would say in this context, don't be afraid to say no to certain roles. Like,
Yeah.
First of all, I think the bard should not be allowed to seduce the dragon anyway. And if you want to say that, you just
keep
say,
your morals off my body.
that's fine. Hey, that's your game. In my game,
It's funny. This is like a side point of mine. I always hear the jokes about horny bards, and aside from the one character I can think of that was designed as a parody of horny bards, I've never met someone playing a bard that's actually that horny and unstoppable.
That's because Joey's playing like a meathead character in our game.
it's normally Joey.
Yeah, no,
That's fair.
usually it's Joey.
Okay, fair.
He's usually like the sexy
Oops,
face
all
that
Joey.
happens to
As
sing a
someone
lot.
who plays bards a lot,
Yeah.
I feel like constantly like, this is
Yeah.
not... No, put your pants back on and tell me... Sorry.
Yeah.
You have to fight Joey because he's the reason there's that stereotype.
It's just it's okay to have some not rails, but have some guides.
Guidelines.
You know,
on
it's
there.
okay to have rails. I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
It's okay to have rails. Rails are not defunct, like default evil.
No.
I've seen some really great games played that had rails on
Yeah.
them. Sorry.
No,
just
I
wanna-
basically agree with
I
you.
want to let you finish your thought. That's the thing that is constantly in my head. And
No,
I'm
I agree
punch
with you.
drunk tonight now.
Especially in a one shot. You have to have some guidance on there because there's a limited amount of time, and if you don't finish, that's unfun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like if you
That's
run out
fine.
of time and everyone has to go, like, oh man,
Or if you run way over, so everyone like misses lunch,
Right.
or they're is late for
Like,
their next
wow.
game.
Or the
That's
next game's waiting to join your game.
Yeah.
exactly. And like that's a
Someone's at
fucking
table.
bummer. That's more of a bummer than I guess we didn't have that many options, but we had a good time and we kicked that dragon in the nuts.
Yeah.
I guarantee the players aren't thinking, we didn't have that many options. Like the players, I
Right.
mean, usually when you've given the players 3 or 4 options, they're going to do something silly otherwise anyway.
Yeah.
They're not going to do exactly the 2 options you gave them.
Right.
I don't plan anything anymore. I stopped planning convention games. I go in, I usually run systems that have some sort of like world or character creation piece to it, and from that is where I pull my story.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then like it's sort of like I don't use rails. I like when you go bowling as a little kid and they have the bumpers
Mhm.
and the ball bounces around between the like things. This is the type of game I run at conventions. So it's like these are the parameters. They're gonna stay in this sector of space.
The ADHDM.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's got to be something, right? That's got to be something.
If you're just listening, I did in fact high five myself, so somebody liked it.
Yeah,
Somebody
that
high
was
fived.
Very good. I make all my students high five themselves now. High five. Like when we have a good moment in class, we're like, okay, everyone self high five, and everyone goes like that, and it's every time it's because of you.
Oh.
I taught my best friend's kid to fist bump.
Yeah, she loves doing that. It's like her favorite thing. But sorry, I got distracted by the ADHD joke. Sorry. I do something similar where it's like a launching point. Usually, I like games that have those things. So as they're coming up with those characters, I usually do a shortened version of character creation for a con. But like I know, okay, a bad evil person is going to be doing this to start. And then I'm going to pull that bad evil person from somebody's backstory. And then it's like immediately relevant to them. Because it's sort of like a pick your own adventure book. Like I know like roughly about what might happen. And then there'll be times where something amazing happens and you completely take a left-hand turn. And then I follow wherever that story goes. Which happens a lot. And you just have to kind of keep... I think it's something like I could not have done when I started GMing at cons. I had very clear plans. I did the very like modular design, which we've talked about a lot, and it was very similar to what Jason just described. But I'm good enough at it now where and I've done so many con games where as I'm going, it's like, okay, I pull in the basic things. I have the basic start of the story that I kind of planned ahead. And then, all right, I'm just going to follow where these people go. And, oh, okay, we're going to need an exciting thing here. Somebody attacks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then, oh, it's that person from your backstory. And they've teamed up with the other person who was at the beginning. And then you can kind of like wrap up, especially if you know the system you're running really well. You like know about how long a combat will take if you've planned it well enough. And you're like, okay, here he goes.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay.
It
So
wasn't though. It wasn't what you said.
no, I believe you. But that's very similar. That's like
Okay.
what I was trying to get at.
Mhm.
And then one other thing I was going to say is put a timer in front of yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
Be aware of what time on the clock it is, because you're going to be way easier at, like, let's say you have a 4-hour window based on, like, that was the number they gave here at some point, but maybe I'm wrong. 4-hour session, yeah. So let's say you're going to know a lot more at 2 hours if you think you're going to run long than if you wait until like 3.5 hours and go, oh no, I got to wrap this up. Like,
Yeah, don't do that.
like typically I find that one for one shots. This is obviously not a one size fits all thing, but typically for a one shot, I find having 2 encounters kind of in my mind at some, like, it's usually a good amount of encounters to have. I like to have a 3rd or 4th one in the wings if we start going way short. I need to throw something else at them, like a random fight scene or something if it's going to be that kind of game, or something along those lines, or like you said, like a series of skill checks to get through like a collapsing building or something along those lines. Or I'll force the players to role play in ways that are fun and different. Like I'll be like, okay, you're in this room. What are you looking at? What are you doing here? Like what are you buying in this shop? What are you looking for in this library? Like things like that. And yeah, I'm a bad planning GM. I'm a very good letting you improv, and then based on your improv, I've written an amazing story kind of GM.
Yeah.
React to the I mean, the story should be about the characters no matter what.
Yeah.
And so the ideal structure of letting them build some characters, listen evilly, and
Important.
and make some notes, have some idea of what these characters want to accomplish, and then that's almost your whole first beat.
Yeah.
And then that second beat is following up, maybe shopping/beach episode, and then that third beat is the conclusion of the whole thing, which should start at hour 3.
Yeah.
Of a 4-hour thing.
Yeah. Generally, what I used to do to prep, I've always been a very low prep GM. But what I used to do, and I've described this on the podcast before, but I would take Post-its because I run everything with Post-its, but you can do 3x5 cards also. Better living through office supplies. And basically, it's like the beginning where my story starts, like 3 important like places they have to go or things that can happen. I generally don't even specify where it happens because that way that's completely flexible. They have to, 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, and then the end.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that is like the beginning's there, the end is there. Sometimes I have like 2 optional endings, like whatever you want. I know. And a lot of times I won't even use
But
either
my
one.
agency.
I know. But that way it also lets you very quickly as you're going, especially if you're using like a GM screen, like, oh, we're running short on time. I'm pulling Post-it number 3. They're just going to jump straight from scene 2 to scene 4. And there we go. So I think that's a great way of just kind of keeping it in your mind too, keeping it organized. Again, like ADHD. What did you say?
ADHDM.
ADHDM. Yeah, that's amazing.
And actually, I just recently got my ADHD like official diagnosis.
Oh yeah.
And
Welcome to the club.
thank you. I don't know if you realize, but what you just described, the Post-it note versus the stack of 3x5 cards, is an ADHD adaptation.
Yeah, because you have to see them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And folks, a lot of people have this like attentional, maybe it's not ADHD, but like being able to see all of the beats at once versus hiding them in a stack of cards. If it doesn't feel like hiding, this is not your issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you put a stack of cards down and you're like, wait, what does card 3 say?
Mhm.
Welcome to being me.
Yeah.
I just wrote it 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I don't even say what does it say. I don't have object permanence, so I forget the card even exists.
Right.
Yeah, like you make that stack of cards and then the whole game goes by. You're like, oh, I made these.
Yeah.
When I said the 3x5 cards, I meant like laying them out literally in order,
Oh,
like
well,
like a
okay.
storyboard in front of you, except without drawings because I cannot draw. But that way you've got like your story beats, and you can
Storyboard would be
literally like move them because I'm very visual. I like if I write story beats down, I usually can do that because I wrote them so I can remember them. But if someone hands me a sheet with them like that, it's like, no, I need them in like a form. And then you can like literally move them around. So if they get there and you're like, oh, we're going to run out of time for this, you slide it out. And then, oh no, they solved that really fast. We need more time. Pull that one in. Always have in case of emergency, break glass.
Bonus encounter.
Yeah, a bonus encounter or way to skip to the end.
Yeah.
So it's like, the evildoers tired of waiting and they are coming after you. And it's like, oh, here's the big fight now. They brought it to you because we've got 45 minutes left of this 4-hour game session, whatever it is. And so have that little like trick to pull out of your sleeve in case like they're nowhere near where they're supposed to be. And you can just then get them that great satisfying end encounter. Again, yeah.
If you do want to give them a bunch of options, all you have to do is limit the amount of like options that can be pulled from.
Yes.
So like if there's 20 things they can first of all, if you're doing 20 things, you have not set yourself up for a good one shot. But let's say if there's like 10 options in a space and they like pick 3, like, well, the other things all happened in that time as well, but these are the 3 you chose to do, and then move forward from there. By the way, what you're describing as far as lining up note cards to have like your beats, that's breaking story. Like most screenwriters, like a lot of screenwriters anyway, most screenwriting books will talk about like a board where you put a board on the wall and it has your act structures broken down by cards. And like, this is where the rising action happens, or this is where, we're getting towards the like conclusion. I do not want to quote the Blake Snyder beat sheet right now. So I'm avoiding it, but like, yeah, this is like when this is like when your cold open is, this is where your act 1 should be wrapping up. And like, it's a way to because film is a visual medium, so even though you're writing it out, you are presenting it as a broken story. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the radio one.
Dang it.
Yeah, it's the TV one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the movie screen one.
Noted.
Yeah. So there's lots of different ways. Play with it. And yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like, have it planned out in a way where you can pull things or add things very easily. Have a very malleable, adaptable story where you can have random encounters that aren't necessarily tied to the story. Like, oh, you stumbled into the Snorlax nest as you were walking, and I was trying not to use like an actual thing. I was like,
Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put everything together. And now you have to like protect the, whatever you're doing.
I do like that you set this up as, I don't do a lot of prep for my games anyway. I make a series of stacks of notes. And
That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
When I first started GMing, and my very first GMing was at a con. And it was a one shot, and it was like, go, jump in the deep end, have fun with these strangers.
Yeah.
And it went well, thank goodness. And so that's the kind of prep I used to do, and now I just don't do it anymore.
I do think that a lot of that is muscle memory too, or lack of a better phrase, when you're running stuff, because like it's same as like when you're playing a video game and you're learning how to play a game for the first time, you're very aware of the buttons you're pushing. You're like, I'm pressing the A button, I'm pressing the jump button, I'm doing this. But after you play the game for like a few weeks, you're not even thinking about it anymore. You're playing
like
the game.
You couldn't explain to somebody how to play.
No.
Because
So I think you probably are still making those cards, but you're doing it in your head now as you go. Same with me with stand-up. When I first started stand-up, I would have a long list of my material, like bit by bit. And then after a while I stopped, and then I started writing it down, like, this chunk here and this chunk here. And then I stopped writing it down at all. And then I just stopped doing stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
So it really came full circle where I just don't do it at all anymore. But I think that that is kind of how my prep went. Like I used to have a lot of visual aids and notes, but eventually my brain was able to do it without the visual aid and notes. So it's okay to warm yourself up.
Yeah, one thing that reminded me, and Jason kind of touched on it for just a second, but I want to circle back because it's important. It's really great if you're running a one-shot and you're running a system that the people at the table are not used to. If you're running a system like PBTA and everybody plays PBTA, they just haven't played this specific PBTA, it's probably fine to skip it. But when I used to run Wild Talents, which is a very little known system that very few people have played, I love it. But I always made sure that I started off with a combat or something where they learned the mechanics of the system very quickly. So then it made the rest of the time go much more smoothly.
It's like a tutorial?
Yeah, kind of like a tutorial. I'm teaching them.
Press
Weird.
X to jump.
Yeah.
Roll this dice to murder.
Yeah, because people learn so much better by doing. So it's if you have that quick encounter that's kind of low stakes and doesn't really matter, and everybody rolls some dice and sees how the basic mechanics work, and then you move on to that's kind of just the little teaser, the thing that draws them in, the hook for the story, then the rest of your game's going to go a lot more smoothly because it's not going to be 30 minutes in when they have these developed characters. All right, wait, how do we fight again? How do we do this now? Like, they've learned that, and it's like you said with the video game, like they're past the stage where like, wait, where's X? Okay, I have to hold X and this together. I'm a PC gamer, so I don't know, but yeah. So that's a pro tip too that will also help with your time management because you will have to spend less time managing their understanding of the system later.
Is it okay if I add one more thing, or do we need to move on?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. One thing I was going to add, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but at some point in my teen life running Shadowrun First Edition.
Ooh. That was a choice.
I mean, that was the game I wanted to play. I didn't know about D&D until college. Well, I knew about it, but like I never played it until, well, anyway. I realized at some point where I was like statting up guards and bad guys, not like important characters, but okay, well, this guard is good with submachine guns, so he's got 4 dice in that and 2 of the, and then this guy, this is the rocket launcher guy, and he's got 3 dice in that and 5 dice, and they're like, oh, they're both rolling 8 dice, right? And at some point I was like, oh, these guys are all just piles of dice, right? Like, I don't need to stat out a dozen guards. I just need like the weapon damage points and 8 or 9 dice.
The day you as a GM learn you don't actually have to stat out your monsters that much is like the most freeing day in your GM world.
Yeah.
And I would say if you want to leave the story open enough that you can customize it to the characters they're making, let your big bad guy or even some of the goons, like, let them morph into what the characters think they're going to be. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how many, like, roll an appropriate amount of dice. Make a good challenge. Maybe even leave death on the line, if that's the kind of game you're running. Mm-hmm. But
only if a Sicilian is involved.
Thank you.
Yes.
But you can do that without needing to know, oh, they've got 1 of this and 2 of the, like, you can give a good challenge. The point, your job is to give a good challenge, and give the characters something to push against, either a mystery or a monster or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But if you see into the Matrix, they're just piles of dice, and you can make those fun and interesting and tailor it. You can color it in however you want, if you understand that it's just a pile of dice.
From dice we came and the dice we shall return.
That's what they'll say at my.
I thought that every time you said pile of dice, and I was like, I gotta get it out at least
Love
once.
it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is like realizing you don't have to stick to the stats. One, it saves you the prep, but also like it gives you the freedom to recognize those amazing moments in a game. And we had one at the con where we did Strategicon 2 weekends ago, 5 weekends ago, 100 years ago. I don't know.
I think it was 2 weekends ago because we had done our last Hex Breakers before that
That's
weekend.
right.
And we haven't had Hex Breakers since then.
Yeah.
It's been 83 years.
Yes.
And we played Pirates last Saturday.
Yes.
So it was 2 Saturdays ago.
Okay, so 2 Saturdays ago from right now when we're recording this, not from when you're listening to it, probably, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, that's not confusing. When was
then?
Yeah.
Just now. When was now? Right now.
Right now.
When there? Then.
Yes.
That's not the way it goes, but you know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So we had this moment in the game where it was kind of near the end, and there's like a big space combat thing happening, and one of the players, Elsbeth, like pulls this amazing move, and if I had really wanted to be like, well, not all the hitboxes have been knocked off, like, I could have. But it was this amazing thing that like was a huge thing that like rang out throughout through the full sector of the galaxy, and like was
and
just
everybody was super into it.
Yeah. And it was just a cool story beat where she was playing like the Unfamiliar, which is basically kind of like the Data or the 7 of 9 character, and she'd like become in tune with like this music thing and like sent out like this peaceful music throughout like the whole.
It was so cool.
Yeah, it was like such an amazing moment, and it was just like boom, perfect, and we were getting to close to the end anyway. It's like just recognize those amazing cinematic moments and just end it. Like, okay, they feel this, they change, and you feel a change in the entire civilization or in, you know, where you are, and like describe it and make it a big deal. Don't be like, well, I'm glad you did that, everyone feels better, but there's still 3 hitboxes on this battleship. What are you gonna do? Like, it's like
I've been the player in that scenario, and I had a character that was like my character's like target in a dungeon, and I got a big attack on her. She had 2 hit points left, and the GM waited till the next character shot her to have her die instead of me having my big awesome attack on it. And like it was 2 hit
Really?
points, and like I was like, come on. And like I know some people are huge sticklers for the stats of the stats, and if that's how you want to play, 100%. I understand that is your way of playing.
Yeah.
But as far as, especially if you're talking about one shots at a con,
Yeah.
you want people to leave that game going, oh my god, I had that at a game, not, oh my god, if only I rolled 2 more dice, like,
Right.
or rolled 2 more points higher on my dice.
Yeah.
I also don't typically, because like I run with my Doctor Who game, we're doing it for a podcast. We usually have to be wrapped up in about an hour and a half at the most. We don't have time to do
That's
a ton
tight.
because we're doing a podcast.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, we edit a little bit, so we maybe get 2 hours,
Huh.
but
What is this edit?
I don't know, and we're gonna have to find somebody to do it soon. So,
Okay.
But like, I don't always have a solution as it to what's going on. I often don't have a solution. Because I feel like a lot of times when you have an exact solution to the problem, then as a GM you get caught up in like, okay, well, they're not doing the things that
yeah.
trigger the solution.
Gross.
Yeah.
If you just go, here's the problem, here's what's causing it. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Then you can kind of go, okay, that thing you said sounds like a great solution to me. And that yours is a good example of her doing this cool musical thing.
Never
brought it all
crossed
together.
my mind. Like,
Yeah.
it would never have been something in my wildest dreams I would have imagined. And she just pulled out this amazing thing. And it was just like, grab onto that. It made everybody feel like the crew had succeeded because she was on their crew. It was just like
Yeah.
cool moments. Like recognize that, use the flexibility with the stats and the die that Jason was describing to like recognize those moments too. So anyway,
Love it.
Cool.
and again, that can be your big emergency break glass when we have 10 minutes left in the session moment.
Should I read letter 3?
Yes,
Do it.
please do.
Greetings, Kimmy and Team Dio. Hope you're all having a great episode thus far. I think this topic's been mentioned a few times in the past, but I thought I'd raise it again as you folks are wanting emails. That's true. Please send more emails.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether this is a boon or disappointment, but I've actually kept this to under 1 page. I would say boon.
Yes.
Boon!
Recently, I traveled the couple of thousand miles from Cairns to Sydney. I apologize for my pronunciation of that place.
It's Sydney.
Thank you. For a family birthday and spent a week catching up with friends. Having played in Kimmy's Starscape session at JackerCon the week before, I was enthusing about it to a good mate and former gamer, lapsed due to adult life commitments. I don't know her. Who was keen and reckoned he could get some folks interested if I wanted to run Starscape online. After I got back to Cairns, we started messaging about the practicalities and shortly came to a few hurdles. My friend had already mentioned that they'd need something flexible that could accommodate players coming and going. They'd been doing video games on Sunday nights and attendance had been spotty for that. In the chat, he said that they normally start at 9 p.m. after kids have been put to bed. Oh my lord. Making sessions of even 3 hours tough. Yes.
Yeah.
And he wasn't sure whether he could get 4 players together. Fair. As my sense of Starscape is that it sings with a consistent group of players building their relationships over sessions and needs everyone on board for session 0 and needs 4 players at a minimum to allow some variety with assigning connections, I have the feeling it won't be a good fit. So we're trying to work what our options are out. I've heard good things about Blades in the Dark, and I'm liking the reviews I'm reading. My friend has also suggested the excessively rules light Rysis as an option. System, I imagine, is only part of the issue. What sort of expectations would we have to set and behaviors would we have to implement to ensure a rotating, shorter session game remains entertaining for all involved? Looking forward to your ideas, suggestions. Cheers, Rob, Radio Rob in the Discord, GM Radio Rob on Twitch, and generally. Cheers.
I have a thought already, Rob. First of all, I think you can make Starscape work great for this kind of setup, and the reason why is how many great episodes of Star Trek exist where only some of the crew members are being highlighted this particular week. I think that, like, while you may have your main ensemble of crew that are all in an episode, you usually have your classic Star Trek setup is this crewman is the spotlight. So you usually have like a Kira episode, or you have an Odo episode, because yeah, I'm going DS9. So all you have to do if you want to make a Starscape game that incorporates players to come and go from game a lot is to make it on a ship that has a bigger crew. Then you don't make it a scrappy little group of scavengers or that kind of thing. Don't make it a Han Solo, Millennium Falcon. Make it a starship that has an ongoing mission, and then it just happens to be that this week these characters who can show up have this away mission, or these people are caught in some strange time loop that the other crewmen aren't in. You can even maybe get permission from other players if as a GM to be like, hey, can they be like an NPC in 10 Forward this week, but not part of the actual adventure. So I do think, for me, I think, yes, systems might be better suited to rotating gamers, but I think your setting is going to be way more important here. It's the same thing if you're going to play a fantasy game. I think making it set in a static town, so people might be there one day, they might be at work another day, or that kind of thing. I mean, that was kind of the fun of, we haven't really played it this way, but one of the fun things about Kids on Brooms is like kids could be in class together, or kids might not be. Like, this whole story could take place in a class that the other kids aren't in that class today. So I think that thinking about it that way, making it like, that's part of, I think, the fun of Blades in the Dark, is Blades in the Dark is usually set in like one specific enclosed city.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my feeling on that. I think a lot of the, I'll stop at this one, but as far as the 3 hours, first, I played a lot of D&D games that are 3 hours long, and it's fine, it works fine. I think a lot of the stuff we just talked about one shots can also be applied to running a game in a shorter time frame. It's just a matter of like figuring out like what you want your encounters to be this week, what you want your overall like thing to be, and how to like end on a satisfying note before going into the next session. Especially if you're playing a lot of games, they're going to have more of a one-off vibe because of the like an episodic vibe, I should say. If you're going to have a lot of players rotating in and out.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Well, are you sure you're qualified to speak on this?
I might be a little.
I wanted to play up how great and versatile a system Starscape is.
It's very nice.
That you can do so much with it.
If you're going to go in a different direction, can I say something first?
So I wasn't gonna talk about Starscape. I was gonna add on about the what you were just saying about episodic. So go ahead. Okay.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I think Starscape would work too.
Okay.
And I'm not just pandering. I would, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I said it in spite of.
All right, you better. I'm not gonna pay you this week.
Okay.
Nobody gets paid, by the way. Just FYI, for those of you who don't know.
Wait a second. What?
Yeah.
What?
I'm still not going to
We
get
are
it.
drinking our payment that Riley brought for us.
Yeah, thank you for that. So part one, Riley.
That one I think Adam brought.
Oh, okay. Adam.
Riley's a genius.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is absolutely the right game for it, because with to me the caveat of, if you can at least get everyone together for the session 0,
Yeah.
or most of them. But at con, we played Starscape and somebody swapped in at the last minute and it was fine. We just like figured out a connection real quick and went with it.
Yeah.
But if you can get at least most of them together for a 0 and get those character connections together, that can be what your little mini episode is about. Is each time whoever's there, figure out who has a character connection and poke it.
Yeah.
Poke it real hard.
Yeah.
And make that the focus of that episode.
It's not a TTRPG, but I recommend checking out the Improvised Generation. They have online shows that they posted up, especially some during the pandemic. It's an improvised show in LA that is, but now online, that is essentially a next gen era Star Trek show that is all improvised. Not every cast member is there every episode, and so it's fun to see what that cast does with the characters who are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually a really good example. Like, I think having, like, if everyone can't make it for session 0, I think that's a really important thing. So have the people who are there to do session 0 be like, okay, you are the starting cast. And this works with anything. This is not just me like saying Starscape, but like any system, whatever system you end up playing in, like have them be the main cast, and then have people who weren't there for session 0, have them add in real time. So like that's what we did at the con. We'd done session 0, or not session 0, but we'd done like the con version of session 0 on character generation, which is really fast. And then we'd already started playing, and this person was like hanging out, and he was like watching, and obviously very interested. And we had one person who had to go because he had a like family emergency. So it was like, hey, you want to play? And so I was like, okay. So I'm like, okay, this is what's happening with you. Here, let me help you make a character real quick.
Yeah.
And then he bopped in as a character who had just shown up.
Right.
So then it's like, you don't have to worry about, oh, where were you? Why weren't you here? Like, it was like, you're new. And then that also gives you a cool thing to spin story off of.
Yeah.
And especially for a campaign, like it's not everybody meets in a tavern, but it's like, oh, this new person adds, and how does this change the dynamics? So that's a great way of doing it.
Everyone meets in a mess hall.
But
And yeah.
I think one of the reasons, though, why I would still encourage you to try for Starscape is because of
It's
the
still well
relationship.
written and charming. I
Well,
agree.
Yes, but the
Okay.
relationship questions specifically
I didn't write this email.
are what can make it easier to do those ad hoc episodes later on.
Yeah.
Because it has everyone tied together in a little different way. That web of connections can feed what happens next.
Yeah.
And you can really rely on that, lean on that, and use that as a tool to go forward. Whereas like Blades in the Dark is great. I love it because of its flashback mechanics, and you don't have to know everything up front. It does a lot of things really well, but it doesn't have these built-in relationship mechanics. That's something you would have to bolt on from something like a game like Decima, which is super awesome and fun to play anyway.
Oh, what's Nekuma?
But you would really want everyone together for that. So the great thing about Starscape is all those trust-based relationship questions are on their character sheets. It's there from the start, and it's built in
Okay.
so that...
I'm gonna yes, thank you.
No, I'm not
I know.
actually pandering.
Okay, I know. I
like,
appreciate that. I think that's good.
You're uncomfortable being complimented, and that's
No.
okay.
But I think
this
your
is starting to
overall-
be a little bit of a
Yeah.
commercial,
Yeah.
and I don't want it to
Okay.
be that. I want to give good advice as well. So I do think that that's important. So finding a system that has those emotional connections, I think, is important. Starscape does have them,
Mhm.
but there is a lot of PBTAs. I think that is a great point, Jason, and I'm not negating your point.
I know.
I'm appreciating you.
Let's say we're talking about Monster Hearts. It's
Yeah.
a similar thing. Like it's all about
Masks.
relationships. Like think about like we talked about it one time, I think off camera, but there was that season of Saved by the Bell where essentially what happened was two of the cast members, like they wrapped the season, and then NBC was like, hey, we want about like 8 more episodes. And two of the cast members, like they couldn't make contracts for it. So we just didn't have, I think it was like Kelly and
That's right.
and Jesse.
Yeah.
And so they brought in Tori Tori just shows up and is there, and then she's gone again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what real life is like with people, especially in high school. So I think if you're playing a game that's set in a horny teenage high school with monsters, like sometimes this cool, awesome, like badass chick with a leather jacket comes in, and then
Oh,
she's
man.
like, her contract doesn't come up, and then they get back to the episodes already filmed, she goes away again. I think like a school setting, I think any sort of like a ship setting or anything, and like you said with the whole, this is the starting crew.
Mhm.
Like this is a space example again, but this is like what popped in my head when you said that. Think of it as like Battlestar Galactica. Like let's
Yeah.
say your first episode is about Adama and Starbuck and Apollo, and then you have a Laura Brosnan episode, and then Rosalind. Yeah. I don't want to have Brosnan.
Yeah.
Laura Rosalind episode. Then like you have let's say you have that episode. Now you have an episode. What happens when Laura? Now I keep saying Brosnan.
Yeah.
James Brolin, when Rosalind comes over to deal with Adama, now you have a whole other episode. Like, there's so much you can do with this.
Yeah, I think especially when you have like an unsteady player base, like really lean into what we can learn from television, like soap operas, teenage WB shows, stuff like that, where you do have like the spotlight in each, make it episodic, so every session has a beginning, middle, and end in it, which can be hard, especially if you're having that 2 hour or 2 to 3 hour time since you're starting so late. But that's really important because you can start and finish it and then start a new kind of story, even if there is a large overarching thing that goes through them all, which there should if you're planning it well. And that way you can also be like we were saying, where it's like, okay, who's here this week? Okay, we'll focus on these two characters. And that'll work with any system if you're doing it right. Lean into like soap operas are the thing. When I'm jumping between like whenever I GM, the party always splits in like a million directions.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really good at like balancing it out, because I think of it, okay, soap opera, watch the scene. Oh, something exciting. Stop there. We're
Yeah.
going to wait. And we're going to cut to this. So like plan it like that, and like really have it like, you should definitely have some sort of communication system for who's going to be there this week, so that you have time to kind of plan ahead and think about it. And like, okay, I'm gonna have so and so and so and so and so and so. Oh, these two have been flirting, and this one is really interested in, I'm stuck on Monster Hearts now, like winning the, CIF this week. Sorry, CIF is like the California State Trophy, like big thing that you do in sports. Captain of swim team. Okay. Anyway, but sorry, it's flexing for no reason. But like knowing who's going to be there ahead of time so you can plan that, like for an episode like that, is going to be really, really important. So having there's a million different ways of doing it. A Google form, because I recommend Google for everything, but or a calendar where people do sign up, or like an invite where you can see and they, you know, tag it in, or a, you know, if you really want to be brave, a, you know, group text. Nightmare fuel for me, but whatever. And like whatever it is, so you have notice ahead of time, and have like set norms ahead of time about when you opt in. Like, I need you to opt in 24 hours ahead of time, or 48 hours ahead of time, or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a deadline, so they're not like 2 hours before. And sometimes like you might be like, oh hey, I was able to, you know, my thing got canceled. Can I jump in? Sure. But they're not going to be the star of that episode because you've kind of already planned for it to be somebody else.
I think it's easier to add somebody into a plot you already built than it is to take somebody out of a plot if you made that plot for their character.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, adventure-based games, like quest games, I think that there's a lot of, like, pressure on a DM to, like, justify a character or player absence. But I find when I'm playing those games, these are games, this is mostly D&D. I mean, games like D&D or like some PBTA games where it's just like, we're going on a fetch quest. We're going from point A to point B. We're going to try to fight some monsters. It doesn't really matter if someone's not there. Like, you don't really, like, I've had so many games, especially during the pandemic, where like people would have it, like, we're all playing over Zoom and some people just, I can't this week or whatever. We wanted to have regular games. We just kind of dropped that character out for that week and then brought them back in, and we kind of just played it off like they'd been there the whole time. And like, as long as they knew they'd been given a little bit of update of what happened, it was never that much of a speed bump. People act like it is, but it's not.
How many times have you forgotten that NPC the whole session?
Yeah.
And then realized they should have been doing something?
Yeah.
You know, it's fine.
Yeah. You know, again, like, not to pander, but like, watch Hexbreakers. Emily is the master of this.
For
like,
sure.
we've had like that game, for all the magic in it, is like just cursed with scheduling. So we have, I think you and I have been the only ones at every session.
We're the two that care.
Yeah. We're the dedicated ones.
Yeah.
But
and also because you live in front of them.
I do. I mean, it doesn't stop me from missing the podcast when I don't feel good. But
that's different.
Yeah. But she has set up a world where it's like multi-universes, and sometimes people are there, and sometimes we're a little bit different characters. And it makes perfect sense of the story why, somebody's not there, and you don't remember that they exist.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then they come back, and then they get to say what happened, and like, did they know they existed? So coming up with cool stories and setting reasons for that too can be great, and just kind of calm people's minds. But again, like Emily just said, it never really matters that much.
Riley said that.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Emily's great at this.
Yeah.
Riley said, this is the why. The why thing.
Emily was a genius for creating that game that way. And especially when she didn't know that we would have a player who, for reasons, had to drop out of the game and somebody else would come in. Like, it was such a good, happy accident of being like, oh, great, I've already built this world where people stop existing in the middle of the story.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Unless she was planning on kicking someone out of the game at some point.
Oh, maybe.
Oh my gosh. I survived, luckily. Thank God somebody else left so that I can stay in the game.
Hey, we still got some games left. Maybe we don't.
I know. Who knows?
Wait, okay. We're both here right now.
We all did play a different character last time.
We did.
So, yeah. Okay, we're here.
We're here.
Are they playing Hexbreakers without us right now?
And there's another universe
Did
where
nobody tell us?
yeah.
Yeah, the game moved to Friday nights.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, but it's one of the hardest things, and especially like you were saying, as we all get, you know, more things we're responsible for in life. There's things that pop up.
Yeah.
And just having a good group that's like accepting and like ready to buy in anyway, I think is the most important thing. And it sounds like you have that.
I do think the thing you said about sort of accountability to the schedule does matter, though.
Yeah.
Like, I have run some sessions as a GM where people kind of wait until the morning of, like, hey, I'm not sure I'm going to make it tonight. And there was a certain point where, like, that was a game that I ended.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't be planning all week to run a game and then find out, like, day of that we're canceling it last minute, because then, like, I did all this prep for nothing. And now my schedule is, like, messed up a little bit. So I do think, like, having, for example, like a spreadsheet that's like, who's coming this week, and I need X amount of people to have agreed to come by this time, or we aren't going to have a game.
Yeah.
And like, also like, maybe even having, like, depending on what your comfort level is for GMing, maybe even having a cap of like, there's 6 slots this week, and More than that
Yeah.
might get too heavy to handle.
A
or-
minimum
yeah.
and a maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great, I forgot to say it. That's an amazing thing that you really do need to agree on. Like, okay, how many people drop out before we automatically cancel? And it's not the GM being like the spoil sport.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
okay.
the rule.
This is
Yeah.
the rule, and we have that for Happy Jacks. It's like if one person drops out, we try and play. If two people drop out, because we only have 4 players in a game usually, okay, we're done. And then we'll just call it. We might try and put something together, but there's no pressure on anybody to do it, just because real life happens, and that's what happens sometimes. So make sure you have all those norms in place too. It's so glad you remembered to say that.
Also, if it is a big enough group to put a cap on the players, that can be one of the best way to get people signing up earlier in the week.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, oh, I want to get my spot.
Yeah.
I know I can make it. I want to go. And I just wanted to relate a little bit, like having those last minute cancellations is one thing, shit happens, whatever. But then you find out they knew 4 days ago and just forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
Like, man, come on. Like,
I've been that person, but I've also been the other person who's annoyed by that too. So
sure, yeah.
it's and it's not so bad like once in a while, but when it's a habit, and when there's the person that you're like, are you coming?
Yeah.
Because you keep not coming. I mean, not coming is always bad, but
Yeah.
when you're
Some
not
people
showing
just
up to a game,
Some people just have a bad brain day once in a while, and that's totally understandable. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know yesterday that I wasn't gonna play today, but today I just don't
Yes,
have it. I don't have
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
yeah, and that should always be respected too.
Yeah.
All
Kimmy,
right.
you were making a dirty joke there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to
Absolutely.
make sure I was laughing at the right joke.
Yeah,
you were
and
laughing.
not
I
I
embarrassed.
missed the dirty joke.
Yeah, I said not coming's always bad,
I
but
know.
when you don't show up, it's that.
I talked
too.
over it. That's my fault.
It's fine. It's all right. I could have done better, but
No, that was on me. For not
I
listening.
just want to make sure I got it.
Thinking what I
You
was
did.
saying was so smart that no one else needed to hear.
you're here so we can hear what you have to say. All right. Thank you so
Already
much.
called you a genius.
Yeah.
Well,
That was a fantastic batch of emails.
that was good.
Thank you both for being here.
I liked how short they were.
Very to the point.
They were about a page long each, which is perfect.
We appreciate emails in whatever length we can get them.
But the short ones are really good.
As
Not
long
that
as-
size
as long-
matters that much.
It's like that. There's that tiny. It's how you use it. It's
A
how you
little bit.
phrase it.
A
It's
li-
not,
it
it's not the
matters.
length of your emails. It's how you phrase it.
It's really the girth of the emails. It's really the most important piece.
But I do think that there's that Tiny Toons where they're having the film festival, and I think Plucky wins because it's just like he's like editing this massive thing, and it just ends up being this like 1 second of him crying, and I'm like, it was short, and he like wins the festival.
Yeah. But I mean, it also depends like what the emails have.
Yeah.
Like some emails, like they're long and you're like, hey, you said that great. Thank you for sharing that. And then other emails, they're very short, but there's a lot of things to discuss. And sometimes they're both.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I'm just being crotchety. It's just fun. It's fun. It's fun to
fun.
pick on long emails. 'cause
Oh yeah.
I'm still reading one from a few weeks ago when I was here, so that's why.
That's the Riley in another
The
universe.
alternate
Yeah.
universe is, like hasn't quite finished that one
It's
yet.
still on that email.
It's like Dr. Manhattan, where like it's August 25th and I'm still reading
Still
an email.
reading the email, yep.
It's October 7th and I'm still reading an email.
All right. Thank you for joining us today for season 30, episode 23 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Riley.
I'm Jason.
And thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent so we can play weird games that we love and that you hopefully like at least enough to kind of watch, and we don't have to worry about sponsorships or ads of any type. Don't forget that our Discord has forum functionality, kind of. We're trying it. And Verk is giving away a copy of, a real, like, physical copy of the Deck of a Deck if you join happyjacks.org/Discord. And this week we are going to leave you with a song called Jenny of Old Stones, which is from the Game of Thrones show. And it's by a band called the Mary Sues, which have a fantastic mandolin player in it. And she's amazing. And now I am totally just pitching myself.
It's
'cause
Kimmy.
That's a thing. It's me. Yes, and you can find them at marysusband.com. So thank you all, and we will see you next week.
High in the halls of the kings who are gone, Jenny would dance with her ghosts. The ones she had lost and the ones she had found, and the ones who had loved her the most. The ones who'd been gone for so very long, she couldn't remember their names. They spun her around on the damp old stones, spun away from all sorrow and pain, and she never